I think we're recording. Hello, friends. We are here today, and we're waiting on Varsha. She'll be here in just 1 second. But we'll be discussing the appendices and some epigraphs from the Prince of Nothing trilogy. So if you have not read the book, we're about to spoil a lot of stuff from not the second series, but from the Prince of Nothing. We'll go around the room. And Dan, will you start us off the introduction?
Yeah, I'm Dan. I've read the series before multiple times, but this is the first time in reading the appendices. So new information from me too.
Yeah. And Carl.
I'm Carl. I'm sorry if you hear my little Yorkie barking in the background. I don't know if you can hear it, but she's going crazy right now. Yeah, I'm Carl, first-time reader. Obviously, first-time appendices reader. I would say that's generally true with any book series. Like, I haven't gone through the Lord of the Rings appendices. I've dipped my toes in them. You know, I've read some things, here and there, but read the Silmarillion. Anyway, I'm sidetracking. I apologize.
You're fine. And Justin's, I'm glad you can join us.
Yeah, hey, I'm super glad to be here. I'm Justin, and I'm a first-time reader, though I did turn right around and reread the Thousandfold Thought after I read it. So I guess technically I'm a second-time reader. But yeah, and then I didn't read the appendices until the second time through. So yeah, really excited to get into it a little bit. I feel like there's a lot in here. So yeah.
Nice. And just before we get started, I guess I should mention that if you'd like to join any of these, you can find us on pagejoin.com, join our forums, and come and say hello. And we promise we'll be nice sometimes, not all the time. So I guess
little bullying here and there,
it's all in good fun, so it's okay. Yeah. We mean well.
Exactly.
Yeah. But so Dan, obviously, without spoiling the second apocalypse, what did you learn you've read the series before? What did you learn from the appendices that you did not know before?
I think I learned some stuff that maybe you can learn from the second series, but I forgot about the apocalypse and some of the other schools of magic. There is some stuff there, and also like the deity stuff, like the religion stuff. I feel like there's a lot here that's not in the actual text on how people view the gods and what they do. So it's quite interesting.
Are we just gonna jump? Like I don't know how. And we're talking about the appendices. I figure we probably should just go like spoilers for the appendices, like through the end of the Thousandfold Thought.
Yeah.
I thought we would just go like A and do the A's and then B's and C's.
Okay. Yeah. Go in order, sort of. This was crazy. I mean, there are certain things I feel like it like adds color to that I didn't feel like you really needed in the books, like stuff like. Agensis gets a big sort of biography, like it's almost a page long, which I thought was really interesting. You learn a little more about. It just gives a lot of context around a lot of the quotes you read and when people are talking about, which I thought was really cool, but isn't necessary per se. And then the apocalypse, which is like 3 pages long, is just insane. It's like it has some stuff you can kind of piece together, but like I now understand the timeline of it way better than I did before. How all the I think the major players, I sort of understood their relations, particularly like the Onasuring Boars and, Seswatha, obviously, and the No God. And, but it definitely like, I remember one of the things that drove me nuts in the Thousandfold Thought towards the end. And I love the book and I love the trilogy overall, but just like a little small thing that like, I was like, why do we not know what's going, like, is this meant to be a mystery? Was one of the last flashbacks to Seswatha's memories in Golgo Tarath when they were like sneaking about him and now Coyote. And now Coyote was like, we have to find her. Like, what's going on? Like, what? And Seswatha's like, she was never here. We weren't gonna blah blah blah. And I was like, who is her? Who are you talking about? What is going on here? Like, you've never named anyone. I don't know what's going on. This seems like a really big deal, but I don't know what's happening. And we find out. I mean, off the top of my head, I don't even remember her name.
Especially, a her at this point. Like this book that's so. deeply male, like, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're like, what? There's a female character in this, like, in this timeline, like,
Yeah.
what?
Right.
I was kind of panicking the first time. I was like, what am I missing? What happened?
Exactly. In the apocalypse, they don't like. I think the extent that we get of anything related to like women in the apocalypse is like the brief mention of Kelmomos's favorite concubine, who maybe is named, because if we get like the passing mention that maybe now Kayudi is Seswatha's kid. And then the whole idea of like the non-men and the womb plague, and that all their women died off, and so they can't have any more kids. But otherwise, yeah, it's like it's very male. And I mean, again, this is another concubine situation. But again, like this is a significant thing. Like now Kayudi went in there thinking they were going to go rescue what seems like the love of his life. And Seswatha just like lied to him about it. Was like fully just like punking the guy to go in to steal the heron spear. Which, okay, I don't know if this is jumping ahead because it, you know, the heron spear is an H or whatever. It's like a fucking like light gun. It's like these things are like, what? I'd been imagining it just like as a normal spear, and then you suddenly get like, oh, this is full sci-fi. Like we're dealing with like laser guns here. You know, the spear of light, it's not like made explicit, but I thought it was pretty clear. Like this is a sci-fi weapon right here, which I thought was really cool. And that's the one weapon that can kill the no god. Very cool, really cool reveal that also presents a lot of interesting questions too about the nature of the no god. I think. I mean, he's still, even after reading this, very mysterious.
Yeah. Plus, you get all the background on the Inkoroi non-man wars, which we didn't actually get because most of it is centered on Second Apocalypse. But here you get a lot more background of. Well, actually, it's not here. Actually, there's a separate one for the Inkoroi non-man wars. But it's like it's connected, right? It's very connected.
You definitely see the way the history sort of it continues, right? Like it's everything is sort of cause and effect, right? Big theme in the series. You see the cause and effect of everything, and it was interesting too because like in, you know, whether we're talking about like the non-men Inkoroi wars or the apocalypse itself, you know, I came out weirdly feeling much more sympathetic for the consult, and like when we actually read about them in the books, they're like pure evil. Like they don't do anything sympathetic. They're like they create rape monsters and you know they suck. But like the motivations there are, oh hey Varsha.
Hey Varsha.
We're just talking about the apocalypse and how the heron spear is a laser gun and the Inkoroi non-men wars. But yeah, no, like they didn't instigate. Like normally you expect the bad guy is like trying to do imperial conquering shit. In like none of the wars, I don't think a single one of the wars did they instigate. The non-men instigated, the men instigated. Like every time it's reaction, like they have to react. And of course, I think then they go out and start killing people. But like, obviously bad. But and again, they create rape monsters. Like, not going to be an apologist for the consult, but I think it's interesting that they like. I mean, we're told that, oh, they're going to conquer the world or like kill everyone, but like that's not what we actually like.
Yeah.
We're just told that, I guess, you know, like, no, we're not given their perspective. And I guess we know their plan now, which is genocide. So that definitely, you know, adds that framing to it all. But like, I don't know. Like a lot of it really seems like the non-men and the humans were like preemptively attacking them. And I think that really complicates the morality in a way I maybe should have expected with how, you know, morally nuanced and complex, often in a fucked up way, this series is. Because yeah, it was just, I thought that was really compelling and really interesting.
I mean, the womb plague is pretty, I would consider that an act of aggression, though.
Yes, I agree that was going too far, but that was after the non-men invaded them and attacked them.
I guess, but when the ark fell from the sky, it also destroyed a lot of things.
But was that like them coming down and like shooting lasers and killing off the dinosaurs, or was that their ship like crash landing? You know, like what's going on there? Yeah, like we're not entirely sure. All we know is they came down like the big meteor, and you know it destroyed a lot of life.
Yes,
well, I feel like the the book is intentionally vague there too, because it says like the first envoy that was sent to go check out the crashed Ark. It says specifically like that nobody really knows what happened there, but then one of the non-men returned with a couple of members of the consult, and so it's like we don't know how that first meeting went.
Right.
Maybe really badly on both the ends. I don't know.
True. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, the console could have just killed them. Who knows? But it is vague.
It wasn't the console at that time, though, right? The console came after.
Right.
It was just Incoroi.
Yeah.
And the console was right. It was just a guy. It was started by a guy that wanted to live forever, right? Or like it found sort of like a way to live forever, like a wizard. No, he wasn't a wizard because he was part of a Gnostic school.
School, yeah.
Was it the Meme Karatig? Is
that's the non-man king? I forget. Was it the non? Was it one of the non-men, or was it a human who started the console?
It was a human that started the console.
But there is Meme Karatig. Yeah. Meme Karatig is a member of the console, though. He's a non-man who went mad and joined them. Or at least that's the story.
I feel like it's a mix now, sort of. There's like the remnant Incoroi, but also now been like the new life brought in by the men that joined, right?
Right.
That's what it seemed like.
Definitely.
But yeah, he was trying to. I guess he was sort of defying the gods with what he was trying to do, so that's why he was sort of exiled. But we also don't know what happened when he went in there, I guess, because he went in there for a while,
right,
before coming out again. So
confirmation too. I mean, kind of talking about going in the Ark of the Skies and everything. That like the old science is a science. It's not magic. Like they say that very explicitly in the appendices. That was interesting. Again, laser guns. I'll never get over that.
So, Varsha, give us this is on your channel too, so to give us an introduction. It feels weird doing the introduction for this because it's always you. So.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I wasn't here on time. I just had back-to-back meetings and then I had a very late lunch. But here I am to talk about the appendices and stuff. And it turns out I don't need to be here because Carl is making all my points for me today. So.
Mission accomplished.
And Justin, it's really nice to meet you.
Yeah, you as well, Varsha.
Hi.
Well, what stands out to you, Varsha? What's something else, or did I steal it all?
No, I think what you said was important. That I was thinking the same things. That there's a random kid running around here, but that the console did not instigate anything. Like not the console, sorry, the Incoroi. If they had let them be, perhaps we don't know for sure. They just have lived peacefully alongside the non-men, and everything would have been okay. But then the non-men kept battling against them, and then the what you were saying, Carl, that it points out in the appendices that the first Anasurimbor who took the war to the Incoroi, the consult now, I guess, that was also on a very hypothetical reasoning that they'll bring about the end of the world. Somebody told someone else, and then like fourth or fifth hand information, that's what the king acted on and decided to wage war, which led to the Great Ordeal and then the Second Ordeal, and I guess there's another ordeal coming in the next series. So yeah, that was very interesting. The other thing that was slightly confusing to me was maybe I think it did clarify it later on. There's talk of gods. The Fanim, I think, say there's just the one god, right? That's their religion, it seems like. But the Indithi speak of multiple gods as aspects of the one god, which also makes the aspect emperor interesting. I didn't know what the bit of the aspect emperor meant. I guess there was a cult that sanctified the emperor as an aspect. So now, or there was a priest that sanctified a cult of the emperor, and then they became the aspect emperor. So basically, they're deifying the ruler of the land. which I thought was interesting. But also, the Book of the Dusk has a book of gods and how to worship them. So it's not a monotheistic religion, even though, in the reading of the series, it felt very much like Christianity. And Christianity is the one God. And there's no, as far as I know, it's not like aspects and variations, right? Like Hinduism a bit is maybe closer to that interpretation of gods. So it was very interesting because the assumptions that you make as you read through them, because of their how close they are to real life things, to have them toned down in the appendix of all places. Come on, but yeah, it was toned down.
I also had the thought of Hinduism as sort of having that resemblance of like the many aspects of God. I'm blanking. I mean, you can speak to it, Varsha. What's the name of like the God who has the many? Is it Shiva?
The three heads, or
Yeah. I mean, isn't there one of the gods who's like there are a bunch of gods who are supposed to be the aspect of him?
oh,
That are like
Vishnu.
different.
Vishnu. He keeps taking avatars and like
Yes,
different gods,
that's it.
like Krishna
Yes.
as Vishnu. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And then there is sort of a similar thing in Christian theology, although of course, depending on the sect, it varies on what like people actually believe. But like the idea of the Holy Trinity is sort of the idea of like three aspects of God: Father, Son, Holy Spirit. But it's definitely not the same as like a full like classic pantheon of gods that are also all just like representatives of this larger universal overspirit, which Kellis apparently believes in, which I'm still not over.
Does he believe it, or is he just using the information from the text to?
No, I think it's pretty explicit at the end of the Thousandfold Thought that he legitimately believes, because that's why Moingus thinks he's crazy. It's like he's hearing these voices and thinks like, no, this shit is real, and like I am a prophet.
And
that's how I read it, at least.
So that was one other thing about the gods that I'm blanking on. You said something about Kellis that triggered a thought. But while I'm trying to remember that, the outside, apparently there are all these gods live in the outside, and you're trying to religion and worship is a way to make them happy, and so that you can have a good afterlife. So I guess the afterlife is in the outside, or at least that's what people believe. And the prophet Indriti Sejanis, that's his name, right? Yeah.
Yes.
He ascended to the nail of heaven. So is that just an ascension thing, or is that where you generally go when you die? It seems like a special case because that's an aspect of ascension, right?
I assumed it was the same as, our religion, sort of like he was the only one that sort of ascended without dying, I guess, to the outside. So I assumed it was a parallel to that, right? Like to Jesus' ascension.
I think so too. I mean, I'm still a little unclear on how the heaven of it all, or heavens of it all, works. Like there's reference to a thing, I can't remember the name, but like a Valhalla equivalent, which I think we actually hear about in the books briefly, that like the warriors believe that like if they die in battle, they're gonna like, be exalted in the afterlife. But it's unclear exactly, I think, what that looks like, because like Valhalla has a very specific mythology, right? It's like it's all these warriors that are like training with the Valkyries. They're brought there by the Valkyries, and they're training to prepare for Ragnarok. And they're fighting every day, and like it's this glorious existence. And I'm unclear exactly what, like, is it just like a more toned down version of that? Not everyone's a warrior, so like, is there must be some sort of heaven equivalent for ordinary people, otherwise everyone would be a warrior.
Yeah. To me, it feels like each god has their own sort of domain in the outside, and you're just securing spot in the domain of the god that you're trying to please. Because it says so. There's like each different one is like there's different types of gods, and you're just trying to ingratiate yourself to them. So they, I guess, secure a spot for you, or protect you, or keep you there with them, something like that, right?
That makes sense.
And it is interesting also that there's like the gods that if you are devoted to them, they give you, I don't know, gifts, or they help you in life or in the afterlife. And there's also the gods which is sort of, you're not trying to ingratiate yourself to them. You're sort of just trying to avoid them or make sure they don't get too mad, but like the punishment gods or the strive gods, something like that, that they admire people that go against them, like the god of disease, for example.
I love that.
Also the god of doctors, right? Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But it also says that there's a note on the ancestor scroll, and it says that the Enrithi also sort of venerate the dead ancestors too, like their own pantheon of family god, which is very Eastern Asian sort of, I guess, which I didn't know because it's only mentioned here. I don't think it's mentioned anywhere else.
It's like I think in the like, you know, the like concentric spheres of like influence or whatever that the outside is described as, like that's one of the ways that they can demonstrate piety, I guess, is through like venerating their ancestors. So that's a way you secure your spot in heaven, you know.
Or maybe it's like, maybe it's like Christian, but like they can intercede for you. So if like these gods, these ancestors, you know, you assume, they're in this hole of war or whatever. Then by venerating them, they put in a good word for you with the god of that domain.
They call up HR and say, he's cool.
Yeah.
You can hire him.
This guy's with me. It's fine. Maybe.
So on further on the subject of gods, the absolute spirit again, where the Dunian absolute spirit or absolute soul, it's not explicitly saying anything, but I'm wondering if the absolute spirit that the Dunian are trying to attain is the same as the absolute spirit of the gods. Did you guys already talk about that? Sorry, am I restarting a topic that you've covered? Okay. So there's that, whether those two are the same. And then the second thing that I thought was incredibly interesting about the Dunian thing was there is this, I guess, Hinduism, Buddhism, and maybe a few other religions whose names I'm blanking on. They have this notion that, you know, you keep taking new lives. When you die, you are born again, and you keep doing that until you attain enlightenment or nirvana. And that's when you stop this cycle of life. And the Dunian thing to attain the absolute spirit seems very similar, except it's by breeding, and it's not one soul that's continuing on. It's like it's a very physical notion, whereas the other one is a very spiritual notion. So it's an interesting transcription of a real world spiritual aspect into a physical, hey, like we'll do it through genetics.
Speaking to that, I think that's the crux of the conflict between Kellis and Moingus at the end there, of like going back to the Thousandfold Thought, is because my understanding of the Dunyan is they're like hardcore, like rationalists, logicalists, materialists, you know, who believe like you have to be able to like scientifically prove something, you know, like you can't believe in souls because you can't scientifically prove a soul is real or not, maybe. Or, you know, before magic, they didn't believe in, right? You know, superstitions is probably what they'd call a lot of this stuff. And then Kellis starts to believe in stuff like the gods that like are much harder to prove, right? Because they're in the outside, they're beyond this mortal coil, you could say. And that's what made Kellis, you know, quote unquote mad, and have, you know, I mean, he has the weird halo hands things, which we still don't understand. I'm very curious to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting the way the Dunyan philosophy kind of is like imbricated with this idea of the outside, like, because the outside is described as like the further away from the material or like purely objective, you know, Irwa or whatever the world is called, is like the further you get away from it, the more toward like pure desire it is. And it seems like the Dunyan's, you know, like the Dunyan's whole thing is to become like a self-moving soul and to kind of like merge desire and objectivity. Like, so it's like they're I don't know. It seems very tightly overlain in a strange way, even though the Dunyan are, purely rational.
Right.
Seems
and everything is restricted to the realm of reality, right? Everything like the causes and effects of everything is all within the world, not in the outside specifically, right?
And it's not something they can exploit or they can break down and use their advantage. So
Yeah.
the whole thing with the Inquiry, I didn't remember that either. That they came and it wasn't when the Ark was there, it wasn't an automatic battle that happened. And I kind of wonder if the way I took it was that humans we destroy what we destroy what we don't understand, and we just wanted to. We couldn't help ourselves. But you wonder what would have happened if there was peace there, and what this world would have looked like if things were done differently.
I'm sure the Inquiry would have done the very minimum amount of rape, right? It would have been very cool.
It's just small, just a smidgen.
Yeah.
I
don't think it would have been.
It's left vague, right? Like how much, would they have created all their monsters, like the Strong, the dragons, the Basharag, if they didn't have to go to war, right? Like that's unclear. What the thing that makes me, that is sort of my internal battle right now, the thing to push back on the thing I was arguing earlier and Varsha was arguing earlier is that we've seen, sort of this preemptive strike or believing that they're a threat that just hasn't revealed itself yet. I mean, that's very much what plays out in this trilogy. And so there's a part of me that's wondering, should we believe that then, right? Were they actually a threat that just hadn't been unleashed? We know their plan, which is genocide. How long has that been? When we were told by Moingus sort of what their deal was, it seemed like that had been in the works since before they came to this world. But I mean, I guess we don't know that. We haven't heard that from them, right? So certainly the unreliable narrator of it all muddies the water. But yeah.
Talk about unreliable narrator. Who do you think wrote these appendices? Because I think they're wrote, in my opinion, they're wrote by the guy, the old wizard guy. I'm blanking. Acamian, yeah, for some reason. I was just blanking. Okay, I feel like they're wrote by Acamian. I feel. Because I think that's how everything is framed in this book. Yeah. Sort of. And the very specific description of the schools and the magic made me feel it was, I don't know, it was written by someone that had a lot of internal knowledge of these things. So if we're sticking with someone inside the world wrote this, I feel it would be Acamian.
That's how it's sort of. It's not directly stated, but there is an author's note, right? Which to me reads not as R. Scott Bakker author's note, but as the author of this Appendices, right? In sort of a meta way. And at the very end, it ends with these would be the names as Drusus Acamian would know them or knew them. So we get the whole little spiel about how they've been translated, a lot of the names, right, across different languages. So I agree. I think this is his, appendix, if you will.
Yeah. So it's not all knowing, right? If there's specific several things that he says, just it doesn't explain why or how it happened or what it happened, right? But it also means that maybe we cannot trust everything we're reading in the appendices, I guess.
I think one thing, I'm sort of starting a new topic, but to add to what you're saying, the whole thing with the head and spear, right? The first time it is mentioned in the appendices is when they say, they don't say why they decided that the head and spear is important or how they found out that that's the one that can kill the no god. They go straight to, what's his name? Seshwata got the dude who is apparently his son, maybe. Got him to get this spear, and then they wanted to use that to destroy the no god. That means Ishwata had some awareness that they were awakening the no god, apparently, but like it's leaving out information, the appendix. Maybe it's deliberate on Baker's part because of what's coming in the next series, or yeah, or it's adding to a little bit to the I guess the framing that the appendices are incomplete or slightly unreliable, perhaps.
Yeah. And it's interesting how for a lot of this apocalypse, like when the way it's described by Akimian, it feels very like, oh, humanity united to fight against the consult, and sort of again like very classical, the good guys against the bad guys sort of thing. And then we read it, and it's all about factions, and like even before the non-men, there was like one allied, and then they sort of betrayed each other, and then also the men betrayed the non-men at the same time, and they were also split, and even the guy that had the Heron Spear, he hid it for many years, right? Without telling anyone. So it's very much paints a different picture than what we've been told, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder too, what, speaking of the Inkaroi and their place in all this, I wonder where, like, were they on the run, or like why? Yeah. And if so, I have the impression that, it was a disastrous situation they were escaping from, or, the whole thing, they're trying to close the world. Like, I guess that is part of the reason why I've been suspicious of them. And I must admit, like, seeing them sympathetically is not something that occurred to me until I just started talking about it. I was like, oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
I agree. I'm very suspicious of them. Like, I mean, just because like what we have literally in our as objective as I mean, I guess we can always wonder, what's actually real. No, I mean, I don't think that this series is so postmodern that it's like, oh, none of this is real. Like I think what when we're in characters' heads, I think we're getting an accurate portrayal of what's going on in their heads, and we've been in the heads of like the old name, I think, I forget what his name is, but one of the top dudes in the console,
the general,
who's in the Synthes.
Aurang?
Is that his name? Aurang?
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, it sounds a lot like Aurangzeb, which is one of the Mughal emperors in India. So I vaguely remember.
There's like Aurang and Aurax, right? The twin generals or something like that.
That's right. They're like twins too, I think. Yeah. Anyway. He's evil. Like, I mean, if you can define someone as just flatly evil, like he's evil. Like his what he's doing, it's not complex. He's bad. So it definitely makes you be like, okay, like, these are not good people. But you then have the weird, again, the weird blurred line here of like, well, if they weren't the aggressors, like what, where do we blame them, right? Are they refugees? My kind of gut instinct is that they probably did, they kind of destroyed their own world and maybe had to flee. Like, I kind of feel like, they're associated a lot with like, obviously like love, in quotes, and desire and physicality, but also like devouring things. I feel like a lot, like there's a lot of kind of almost like food imagery too. And so I could definitely see it as like sort of they burned out their planet and had to leave and crashed here. And that's just, we're not nearly given enough for me to like feel confident about that, but that's kind of my first thought. But who knows? I mean, any number, their sun could have gone, supernova or something.
Yeah.
Like who knows? Certainly they seem to be refugees of some sort, but exactly what they're fleeing from, and what their part in that is unclear at this point.
My like suspicion is that they've got beef with like somebody from the outside, like maybe a god or something, right? Who was, not pleased with their like carnal infatuation and their devouring of everything. And I don't know. Yeah. But like, they're the only thing, they're the only thing in the material world that's from the outside in this. So
and they're afraid of being damned, right? I mean, that's what we've been told. I guess we still don't know that for certain from their perspective. That seems to be the plan still, right? Is they want to kill people to like break down the barrier between the outside, or just
to create a barrier.
To create a barrier to make sure there's no more overlap, which I guess would make this like a hardly material world and would remove the magic of it all, which is something I hadn't considered. Maybe,
which they don't use, I guess. So good for them.
Yeah, and stop them from being damned, right? I guess
Yeah.
I don't know what that would mean for them post death, but if they're just like it's the void, they're done, or I don't know.
Or
To
did
me, they give me very, like Warhammer 40k, Drukari, Dark Elf sort of vibes, right? With their like ships and everything, even the aesthetic. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but they give me very. Maybe he was inspired by that.
Or did they crash land because they are damned? Or is that?
Oh wow, is this hell? Are we in hell? Oh,
Not
geez.
exactly a nice place.
Maybe the outside is space. Maybe.
Yeah.
I
And
wonder.
the gods just live in space. Could be.
I mean, we're told
Each have their own planet.
it's certainly not like the. Are we told they come from the outside? Because we're told they come from the void, right? Which is clearly space. And I'm unclear if they've defined the outside as being the same thing as the void, or if it's like this metaphysical, like other world.
I don't think we know.
Yeah.
I think.
I don't think it's clear. I think it's meant to be actively unclear at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, because it could be just that like they're traveling through, I don't know, dimensions or something. If the outside is just, again, like space is the outside or something. Like we don't know if it's actually like space like here, like our space.
It is interesting that like the inclusion of this sci-fi element, I guess you could say, definitely makes it. I mean, this combination of like magic is very real. Like it seems to have some sort of rules, but like it's not. There is a spiritual aspect, right? There's this like supernatural aspect, and then you have this very like, I mean, it's not real science, right? But like the techne and everything, and all their like alien biomechanical, biological machinations, and that it does make it really unclear, right? Where does the material world end and like everything else begin? Like the outside, is that like a material reality, or is it beyond what we would maybe like commonly know or be able to perceive ourselves, like in our world, right? I mean, these are like real questions people have, right? And I think it's interesting because it makes you like question everything, right? Like, how does magic work? Like, is magic just a science itself in this universe, or is it like beyond that in a sense? Does it like clearly their rules, their laws of physics are like at least slightly different because again, people are performing magic, like doing spells, but yeah, I don't know. It adds, it makes everything so much more, I'm curious if this is all just like a sci-fi story hidden in the guise of like a fantasy story, or if this is like actively, sort of doing like a reverse of what, I'll limit this, but like there are certain famous sci-fi stories that seem like fantasy stories, but are really just sci-fi. Like Book of the New Sun is one of them, I think, as opposed to Dune, which I think is actually a fantasy story. But anyway,
I mean, soft sci-fi is basically fantasy. In my mind, there's no difference between soft sci-fi and fantasy. It's right. Literally using the same.
Yeah, the genre boundaries, right? It's all made up ultimately.
Yeah.
But I guess
sci-fi, I think it's very distinct because it's grounded in science, right? But this is not.
I agree. Anyway, rewinding to what I was like trying to get at was like, I'm curious to see if there is like sort of supposed to be this underlying logic to everything, or if there is this metaphysical, supernatural element, and there's this clashing reality between the two. Yeah. And I don't know if we'll get into that in the next 4 books. I mean, I imagine to some level it'll be addressed, but we'll see how much.
Well, to think more about that, what you should think also, I feel, is the fact that it's mentioned several times. There's more discussion on nullifying magic. There's on the core, like there was actually a school which made the core, like a school of magic or whatever it is, which studied nullifying magic. And also I was going here at the passage that talk about Atrifau, or whatever you pronounce it, which says it's built upon anarchane ground. So it's ground where sorcery doesn't work. And I feel like that there must be something there. Like, is it something like maybe there's a meteorite that fell down and for some reason that something coming from the void is not affected by sorcery. I don't know. Like there must be something there with the tears, because the fact that the tears transform them into salt. I don't know. Like I feel there must be something in the logic which explains something with that.
It is
Very specific.
When we're told that they turn into salt when they're touched by the chloride, are we meant to read that very literally, as they literally turn into like the material, the element, you know, or not the element, the chemical salt, or is that like they just seem like salt, you know?
Or something like dust or something like that.
Right, exactly. Like
Okay.
I'm unclear if we're meant to be like they're like if you tasted them, they taste like salt.
I assume based on there was a short passage at the end of the Thousandfold Thought where there's a kid who goes through the ruined battlefield and he's like chipping off a part of a Scarlet Spires guy and like trying to collect them, and it says something about the collecting the salt that would become his fortune, and he's the kid who's approached by Aurang or whatever, and it's this very brief interlude, but it would lead me to believe that they turn into something quite valuable and maybe unique. You know?
Well, salt was.
Yeah, salt was, right? Like back in the day.
I guess, yeah.
It very much could be that they're literally, I mean, that's interesting. I remember that scene. I'd totally forgotten about that. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe, you know, that does lead me to believe that they literally turn into salt. Which part of the reason I ask is, I mean, one, I'm just curious, like just as a general like fact, but two, salt is like commonly associated with kind of anti-magical, anti-otherworld, you know, like Western lore has a lot of like, you know, if you want to ward off fairies, like use iron or salt, right? Like ghosts, evil spirits, like you see in horror movies all the time, right? You probably can all like think of like the common imagery of like the salt circle, right? To ward off evil spirits. And so like I'm curious if that's what kind of Bakker's playing off of, is sort of this like salt as this like anti-magic like symbol, if nothing more, if not more literal than that, just like a symbol of that.
Yeah, it's also a symbol of like salting the earth or completely destroying something, right?
Yeah. Right, stopping growth.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just the whole anti-magic thing is very unique for me in the way it's built, and I don't know. I'm so wondering how it actually fits into everything else, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Is this something that this series was also based on a tabletop game, right? A role-playing game? Is the anti-magic thing?
I don't think so.
No?
I feel it.
I thought it was.
I think
I thought it was based on
D&D, right? I think it was a D&D campaign. Is that
this was D&D too?
Mhm.
Oh wow! I just thought
it
that was
must
the
have
last
been
thing.
heavily modified.
Yeah,
But it could have been a system like, because what was it? The other big series that Carl mentions a lot of times, Malazan, right?
Yeah.
Malazan is a
Very
curse, I want to say.
Yeah. Well, but it started as AD&D, and you can see that in the races. They map onto D&D races. They have their own unique take on them, but like, this is not a spoiler. The 3 Teast races are clearly the 3 main elf races in D&D, and just like twisted slightly.
Yeah.
And it, you know, it very clearly maps on in a way that like I feel like this doesn't. You know, I mean, we have elves. I guess I talked about orcs, right? The stronger orcs. There is like more definition of orcs, but yeah, I don't know.
Very customized though. It must have been very difficult because the whole magic system would not fit. Like a lot of things would not fit, right?
Right. That's the other thing, is Malazan's magic system very much does kind of fit with both GURPS and D&D, and like the whole. I'm not even going to get into that, but this one definitely does not. Right. So that's interesting.
I don't know if it's the story or just the character. I seem to recall someone mentioned that Kellis was a character. I think it was Kellis that Bakker played in their game or something like that. Anyway, the reason I brought it up was because I was wondering if the whole anti-magic thing is a D&D characteristic, because Malazan has an anti-magic thing that's done differently, but it's there, and I've only read the 2 books that are supposedly based on D&D, and I don't play, so I don't know.
At least in 5th edition, I can't think. I mean, I'm sure there definitely are things that like weaken it. It's kind of a common trope. I mean, you see in, I think it's like just like a common. the way I'd read it, and I don't know if this is based off of the D&D. Like, I guess it is kind of a gaming thing, but I don't know if it's like intentionally pulling something from D&D. But like if you have this immense power, this magic, right? You need something to counterbalance that. Otherwise, sorcerers will rule everything, right? You just can't beat them. So like you have the Kore, and similarly like Odotarl and Malazan, right? Like helps to counterbalance a lot of the insane sorcery you see. And I guess that is kind of a gaming thing. I also just assumed it was like a logic, like dramatic thing. Like you don't want to have this giant, I hate the term plot hole because it's so often misused, but like, this like question of like, why is it that sorcerers aren't ruling everything? But maybe it is pulled from, I don't know.
And an additional thing that it has in common, I suppose, is that the lack of magic is from a source of magic. Like without spoiling anything for the Malazan readers, but this is like the Korai is created by sorcerers, which is very, very interesting. But yeah, to your point about science versus magic, Carl, there was this one. Yeah, the definition for sorcery in the appendix, it said that sorcery language typically is shaped by the world, but sorcery tries to shape the world with language, which I thought was very interesting. So yeah, I don't know, maybe if language and what you can do with it is falling within the purview of science. But then there's this other thing, the definition for the mark, which it says, sure, like there's the whole damnation and abomination thing, ways to look at the mark, but the thing that seemed very sensible to me is it's like if you've written something and then you've rewritten it and you can see the changes that were made. That's what the mark is, or that's a theory of what the mark is, which makes sense. Like sorcery is basically rewriting reality as it would have been. So it seems to be a power outside of the world, which I guess, one way to look at it is magic, but the other way is, you could, in theory, they have a whole metaphysics and definitions and how to make things work of the sorcery. So if you understand the origins, it's science, right?
Yeah, I think that like Bakker in this series, I love the way that he's like magic is so concerned with meaning and semiotics, like, and the whole concept of being able to see the mark as seeing like the what's the word, like a palimpsest, like over reality, right? Like they're rewriting it, and they use this like they use these dead languages, right, in order to like be able to get at the like cradleistic meaning, like as if there's a true like a true meaning of a word that is like directly related to like materiality itself, and then the later bastardizations of language get further and further from that, like this, the signifier gets further from the signified as language gets further and further away from the like quote objective truth of like maybe the non-men tongues or whatever. But I think that stuff's really fascinating. Like I think the magic system is so cool, the way it's trying to deal with like the idea of meaning and how it's made, how that has to work.
That was another thing that I just like, dude, hats off to this guy. Like it's so clever and so interesting and thematically rich. I mean, the idea of sorcery and philosophy being like two sides of the same coin, I thought was just like so cool. That it's almost this like Taoist idea, right? Of this like binary that interplays with each other, right? I just thought it was so interesting.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. Does anyone else have to say anything more about this? I was wondering if I could mention a couple of things before I have to leave in like 15 minutes, I guess, which I thought were quite interesting. I thought was very interesting the description that the way the mandate sorcerers are initiated is with Seswata's mummified heart, which I don't think we knew before. And it was
No.
like, does it have some weird things some weird sorceries or things they put inside, or like they preserved his memories or something, or did Seswada do it himself? Well, we don't know how. Actually, we don't know how they got that, but I thought that was pretty cool.
Super cool.
And then there's also a quick note on a random battle, which says it's the first battle of that Proyas fought and won, I think. And I don't remember if it's mentioned if we already knew that, actually. Maybe it's mentioned in the first book. But because it says he whipped his cousin, and the humiliation caused his cousin to try to get his honor back, and that's why he speculates that's why he left with the Vulgar Holy War all the way at the beginning that caused that whole thing. It's an interesting connecting of a bunch of different things there, right?
That I think was mentioned in the first book. I think we did get when we were introduced to Proyas after or maybe it was even when we were first introduced to the character you're talking about.
Yeah.
I remember that anecdote.
Okay. But does it mention that that's probably why he left? Because I thought he said he left for some reason, but maybe
I think that's how I think that's how it comes up. Is they're talking about like what's motivating him, or maybe it's even later than that. Maybe it's after that, and then when they're talking about kind of Proyas' backstory and Zen's backstory and Academia. I don't remember exactly. I mean, my memory is definitely hazy, but I do remember the whipping specifically, and they talk about like the humiliation and how that like sort of warped the guy's personality. But it's a super interesting story. Very, it adds a lot of depth, connective tissue. Right?
Yeah,
it's on page 299. Mentions it. I have it written down.
Oh, okay. Really? Wow.
Yeah. Nice. My notes. Yeah.
The master of notes.
Also, there's, again, I'm not sure if it's mentioned in this series already, but there's mention that the humans that live here in Arwa right now are not the indigenous ones. The indigenous ones are the Mwama or something. They got enslaved by the non-men, and the current humans came in. I think it says it's the breaking of the gates, or it's called, from the east, and then now there are the 5 tribes, right, that live here of humans. And I guess we don't know what happened to the original humans. It doesn't really say, as far as I remember.
But are humans native to Irva? I did not get that at all. Non-men are native. Where did the humans come from?
Over the mountains on another continent.
But there were other humans
continent,
before.
not the planet.
Yes, they're native to the planet, but they're just. I believe Ir was a continent.
Yeah, but the Mwama humans were here before then.
Okay.
Right, but I don't think it's specified if they come before or after the non-human. It just says they're enslaved by the non-humans. All the human, like by the non-men, all the humans in this area. But maybe they were not really humans; they were something else. Who knows? Right. But I don't know. That's interesting. Then there's also a term which says legion, a Dunyin term referring to the pre-conscious source of the conscious thought. I'm not sure what that means. Pre-conscious source of the conscious thought. Is it like like all your, I don't know, all your subconscious, which like all the different subconsciouses you have or something that are the origin of your conscious? Is that what it is? Or does it mean sorry,
maybe it's like a synonym for the darkness that comes before sort of thing? Or, I mean, because that's what it sounds like to me. I mean, maybe I misunderstand what the darkness that comes before is. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like that's the whole idea, right? Is like everything that came like what you can't control, everything that like the nature, I guess you could say, nature and nurture, really, like everything that is outside that came before you, the subconscious of it all, right, that influences every action you take. I don't know,
but like the fact that it says legion, it makes me think of a multitude of things, which like the dark stuff that come before gives a much different image to me.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm not sure what it refers as the legion. Is it maybe like all the other people which sort of contribute to culture and your circumstances? or maybe all the different little things which, put you in that circumstance.
That makes
I'm
sense
not
to
sure.
me. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, there's also the definition of history, right? The Dunyan have a definition of history that's different from the non-Dunyan people, and
Yeah.
I guess history is made of multitude, so maybe that's why legion.
I think it's the idea of everything that came before your individual conscious thought. Like having just reread that, I think
Okay.
exactly. It's like other people, animal, like everything. Like the movement of stars. The Big Bang, like every single like the multitude, right? As Varsha was saying, of factors that influence your individual consciousness.
Yeah, because their whole bit is they want to be self-moving and and be the thing that comes before. So if it's pre-conscious, then it has to be driving.
That makes sense. That makes sense to me. Then I also highlighted when it says the miracle of circumfiction. Okay, circumfiction. Yeah. And then it mentions the miracle of water. But in the miracle of circumfiction and the miracle of water, it says the first of the three so-called miracles. What's the third one? Water, circumfiction.
I
What's the
think
third
it's
one?
Inri Sejanus coming back.
Well, because it says it's the first of the warrior prophet's three so-called miracles.
Oh, the warrior I don't.
Yeah.
So wait, okay. Water of life wasn't referring to Fane's thing. It's
when they find the water in the desert, right?
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I forgot about that scene. Yeah.
But it seems very, like it says specifically three miracles. Like, do we miss something? But it's not listed also because the other two miracles are listed here, but the third one is not.
It's a very obvious omission, I feel like, on Bakker's part here. Like it hasn't yet come, maybe. Like, yeah, because it's there. I circled both of them because I had the same question. I was like, where's the thing?
That's so interesting. Yeah, I didn't.
Very much like the urban legend of the three pigs in high school, right? Called the number 2 and number 3, and then everyone looking for number 1, but it doesn't exist.
I've never heard it.
You never heard?
It's so funny. No. Yeah.
Really? It's like a high school prank sort of urban legend.
That's awesome.
Huh.
But it's pretty much the same thing, right? It's like, I don't know. Okay.
I just noticed though that those two parallel the miracles of the other prophets who came before. So they seem to be very carefully chosen miracles on Kellis's part because the Farnham miracle is water, and I guess the Indri Sejanus miracle is what? Like coming back from the dead.
You're so right. And that leads into the thousandfold thought, right? Is this whole idea of this unifying movement. That's a great point, Varsha. So I guess then the third miracle is, it seems like that your logical train of thought is that it's something unique to Kellis.
Yeah,
maybe.
But it's weird that it says the 3 miracles here in the appendix if it hasn't happened yet. It's very weird.
Maybe
is it the teleportation or the halos?
That's what I'm wondering, right? Is it something to do with the magic? Yeah, the halos. I mean, because there was Inri Sejanus is the latter prophet, so there was a prophet before him. So maybe actually it has to do with that one. We don't know. Who wrote the Tusk? I forget? Are we given a name?
We don't know.
We don't know.
I think we don't know because it's the oldest remnant of humanity. There's no information before that, I think.
So, who's the original prophet then? Are we given a name for an original prophet?
I don't know.
Because Enrichism is Inri Sejanus based off of the tractate, right? Which is this adaptation of the Tusk. And then Fane came and was like, no. Like, that's not the complete picture. Here's the complete picture. The Tusk is wrong. So, there must be someone, right? Like, again, we have the latter prophet and then the even later prophet, right? Who is also called false prophet, right? Like,
The old prophet, Angushtile, whose name is, whose wife was Esmenet. By the way, is that
Oh.
why is that the reason why he's married to Esmenet now? Because he wanted. I didn't catch
maybe.
that he was a prophet when we read that
Yeah.
in the book. But
Yeah, I feel like there's
apparently,
a couple, right? Like a couple
yeah.
minor prophets, sort of. I think they're vaguely mentioned in some places.
So this guy is apparently the most famed old prophet of the Tusk. Most
And
famed.
he's the equivalent of Abraham, I feel, because there's also another thing which I went to. There's another appendix note about Mount Kinshurea, where it says that he sacrificed his youngest son to the god, which is the same as Abraham sacrificing Isaac. But here it doesn't stop him. He actually sacrifices him.
Exactly. There's all those interesting, like the slightly, you know, it's like taking the Christian mythology or the Judeo-Christian mythology and like turning it, you know, like 25 degrees, you know, having, and it's like always a little darker too. You know, it's like, okay, so Abraham wasn't stopped. He actually like murdered his son. And all you know, there are other stories like that. I think it's so interesting.
And and apparently also the entry for Angishrael, also known as the burnt prophet for bowing his face into his fire after confronting some dude. Did Kellis put his face into a fire at any point?
I don't know. But that also does parallel the God talking through the fire in the Old Testament sort of thing.
Is this in the A's? Is he on good Shane?
Yeah. Oh, by the way, sorry. I just found a note going back to what we were saying like at the beginning, because we are discussing that maybe these notes are not really completely true, right? Because in one of the notes it says that about the Grandmaster of the Scarlet Spires, in the notes it said he was assassinated by the Caesarium for reasons unknown, the predecessor to Elizarus, right? But wasn't he assassinated by the consult?
No.
I thought he was killed by the consult. No?
The Kisharim did him because they were convinced that the consult were a construct of the Scarlet Spires, I think.
But why because the Caesarium found the consult?
Yes,
Yeah,
and they remember it's the parallel again, talking about those like dualities. This Charm did exactly what the Scarlet Spires then did. When they found out about the Skin Spies, they thought it was the Scarlet Spires, so they went and assassinated the Scarlet Spires.
I thought some of it had been orchestrated by the consult to destroy the. Maybe not.
I think we are led to believe that, and I definitely speculated that at some point. But my understanding is it was just humans being stupid, and like on both sides, like they were like, no, the consult isn't real. Like they're long gone. It's the enemy we know, right? Versus this unknown.
On that tip too, I was thinking back. I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, okay, so I remember the description of the assassination of Sashioka, because I think Eleazarus recalls it at some point, and there's a kind of teleportation magic that happens when they take out Sashioka. Right? Like I think that he says like they're there in his like private chamber where nobody's been able to be. Then all of a sudden there was like Kisharim were there. They killed Sashioka and then they were gone.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I missed that.
I didn't think they could do that.
Well, I didn't think so either. It was in book 2 or something, I think. So I'm not totally sure, but that's how I remember it anyway.
I think they. I don't know how they got in, but I'm pretty sure they die there. Like, I think they get killed. I think they were like suicide assassins.
Okay.
But I also may be misremembering. I don't know. Yeah, it's been a while.
Okay. In my mind, I thought they were skin spies, maybe dressed like Caesarium or something, but I just thought they were for some reason.
Yeah, that's what I thought for a long time, but I'm pretty sure that they are fully like.
Okay.
At least that's what Moingus says. Like Moingus is pretty explicit about it. The Sisharim ignored him and went and assassinated whatever the guy's name is, the leader.
Okay. I thought that happened after. That's why maybe my timeline is a bit flipped around.
A lot of things to remember.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, before. Sorry. Go ahead. I want to start a topic.
Yeah,
No,
please
go ahead,
ahead.
Dan. You.
Okay. I think this is the last interesting thing that the last two interesting things that I found is that on the definition of a solitary god, to what we're discussing before, it says, according to Phanim tradition, the god is not, as being Rifi claim, immanent in existence, nor he is manifold in the way described by the latter prophet. By immanent, in this case, does it mean that because God manifests itself through the history of man? Is that what the Inrithi believe? I thought there was, because I thought there was a very radical difference in how the Inrithi view God than the Phanim, not just in like being one or two of them, like an actual like metaphysical or theological difference.
I mean, at least one major difference is they don't believe in the multitude, right? The 1,000 gods. So I think that's you could argue is significant, right? Like, but I don't know the immanence, right? Yeah, that is an interesting.
Does that mean that the Phanim don't believe that God manifests itself in reality and it's just like a thing of the outside?
That is how I would read that too. Yeah,
I think so too, because I think one of the tenets of the Phanim religion is that they're like physical representations of God are not allowed.
Right.
Okay, that's interesting.
So
yeah.
The word that the Phanim use for the Inrithi is idolaters, right? And I forget what the Inrithi call the Phanim, but the heathens, is that what they call them? That's it? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's called something like that.
I'm so curious now about this Ange Shrell story. Sorry, I'm still on that. not to like pull us back, but I'm like going through it all now, and I'm like, okay, so he bowed his face in the fire after confronting Husjelt. Why did he do that? Husjelt's the god of the hunt, right? So he theoretically confronted this god, and obviously it does parallel, right? The burning bush, right? But like what? Like why did he put his face in fire?
I feel it's probably
like what's going on there, right? I mean, we're talking again about this third miracle. Like you would think that as the prophet, he would. I mean, I guess maybe he wasn't a prophet in terms of like doing miracles. I don't know, like he led. The big thing that we do know is he led humans, or not all humans, but the 5 tribes, right, beyond into Irwa from the mountains. Is that supposed to be a miracle? Like, is that paralleling Callus leading humanity somewhere? I don't know. I mean, I'm completely spitballing here because I'm trying to think of like how this all connects. And again, like, what is this guy like? Why did he burn his face? It's completely.
I feel like it was something like the god told him to do it, and he was like, "Oh, if you have faith, you'll do it because I'll protect you," or it's something like that. And it also feels very much like Abraham, right? Because he also brought the people to the promised land, which is like bringing the people to, right? But anyway, sorry, I need to skedaddle now. But thanks for the discussion. I'll listen to what you guys are going to discuss next when the podcast comes out. I'm sure it will be very interesting. But yeah, thanks a lot for the discussion. I'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks, Dan.
Next time.
Okay, Dan. Bye.
Yeah, I don't know. It's because I just don't know why I wouldn't just say that, right? Not like Angishrel, sorry. It's still on that. Why burn his face? Like you would think if it's just the God just told him to do it, it would just say that.
I seem to remember something like there's during like the Holy War encampment early on, where somebody tells a story about Israel about how because I think when you encountered the god, the idea was you just immediately bow, and he happened to be, so it was like a demonstration of his faith that he happened to be right in front of a fire, and he just like hit the deck and like bowed his face in the fire.
Okay.
I think.
Didn't people do that for Kellis and the Warrior Prophet? I remember somebody put their face in the fire as like a sacrifice, or am I misremembering that? When Kellis started to get a kind of a following and people started to call him the Warrior Prophet, and if he had told somebody or somebody did it, I have to look through my notes, but I remember something about
That sounds
somebody putting their face in the fire. I might be wrong.
I mean, that would be Kellis's MO. So
Yeah, probably just not remembering it. It might be right.
that definitely sounds like a thing that would happen.
So is this dude like Moses and Abraham rolled into one? Is that what's going on here? He led his people out, and am I remembering my Christian lore correctly?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it does kind of seem like that. There isn't otherwise a Moses equivalent. They don't talk about Shigek, someone coming out of Shigek and leading. I don't know. Yeah.
this series makes me wish I were more familiar with the Bible.
So can I start a newish?
Please.
It is a pretty different topic. So the Dunian apparently believe that men who have darkness that moves them don't have will, and they are trying to attain a state where they do. So, I mean, I've heard arguments that this series claims that we do not have free will, whatever, like that. Baker is basically saying that people don't have free will. That's probably what many people read this as. But one, it is the Dunians' belief that people don't have will, and that may or may not be true. I think there are many reasons to disbelieve that, right? With sorcery and prophecy and so on, and the gods, the existence of the gods, which apparently the Dunian completely discount. And the other thing is that the Dunian apparently clearly believe that they do have free will that they can exercise, or they want
Right.
to get to a point that they exercise. So yeah, I just thought that that was interesting, both as what you can read into a series based on what it's telling you, but also it makes sense that the Dunian at least have to have free will, even if the rest of the people don't. Like, if it's either that this is what the Dunian believe, it may or may not be true, or this is true and the Dunian are right, but the Dunian at least are able to exercise will to some extent. It seems like.
I think it also depends on how you're defining free will and also the nature of prophecy in this series. Because if Kellis is having legitimately visions of the future, which it seems like he is, separate from sort of the whatever the meditation trance sort of, predicting the future thing that the Dunyan do, like it seems like Kellis separately from that has like a magical sort of prophetic visions, right? And if these visions are not possible futures, but the future, then that opens up the question of like determinism. And if there is only this one timeline, right? If time is sort of a straight line, and debatably, right, even a straight line when you get into like inner folded upon itself, if you can see the future and that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, how do you even define free will? Like, because that was why it was so upsetting to Kellis, right? When he thought of like, okay, if I see the future, then even if I separate myself from the darkness that comes before, that doesn't mean I'm free because all my actions have already happened, even though I've not yet done them myself, right? Like a sort of, time existing as this like single stretch, right? That already the future's happened, we just haven't lived it yet, sort of thing. And that to me is, I mean, one, that's a question that I personally find very interesting. I took a whole class in college on like time travel and sort of the theories of like free will and destiny and all sorts of stuff like that, and how different ideas of like time and time travel and stuff like that would work theoretically. I don't know. I mean, I guess it really depends on like whether Kellis is really having these visions, and again, how those visions work. and then the question of what even is free will on top of that, right? Like, if people are willingly, willfully making decisions, even if they're influenced by the darkness that comes before, is that free will? Do you define free will as cutting yourself off from the darkness that comes before, right? I mean, it's just a philosophical concept, right? Like, the Dunyain take everything they believe for granted. In a sense, their logic is just as circular as a lot of the zealots that we see, right? They're zealots in their own way, I would argue. They're certainly not open-minded about other trains of thought.
No.
Moingus is a prime example.
Exactly, right? Exactly. Moingus is suddenly presented with all of these, things that conflict with his view of the world, and his solution is just to call it all, like Kellis, for example, to call him mad, and that's his downfall in a big sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting. I'm again, I have to give credit to Bakker, because you definitely get the sense that he's thinking about all of these things, right, when he's writing about it, and he wants you, that the Dunyain are these like ultra materialist rationalists, right, and he wants you to kind of like I mean, the whole series is, right, like kind of a plea for skepticism, I guess, in a sense. I mean, certainly that's how I've read it, is like this idea of like constantly challenging yourself and others and being open to like other worldviews and other ideas, right? It's very cool.
Yeah.
I think kind of like maybe the other side of that or the other side of that coin is that, like, my theory is that Kellis has, like, Moengus is right and Kellis has gone mad because, like, he's aware the entire time that he's treading conditioned ground, right? He's like, right. He's walking the only path that Moengus laid before him, and it's the only thing he could have done despite the illusion. And like, because of that, like, he manifests this whole idea that he is in fact the son of God and all this stuff. And it's the only way he can explain to himself that he is a self-moving soul, or that he's enlightened, or that he's attained the thousandfold thought or whatever.
That's interesting.
I mean, I love the idea. Yeah.
Would you explain then the halos as like sort of he's subconsciously creating this like illusion of light or something, using like, because that's the big question to me, right? Is the visions and the halos, like what is going on there?
And the fact that other people see them.
Right, exactly. Like it's not just Kellis hallucinate. And I mean, that's the thing with the visions, right? Is he has visions that we actively see play out. But you also then wonder, like, I mean, is he making, it's the whole question of like prophecy, right? It's like, do you make your own prophecy? Is it like through this expectation that like, he has, one of the images that like comes to mind is he has the image of like someone in silhouette against the sun holding up a severed head, right? Where he doesn't explicitly see that it's Nair. So did he, through his actions, make that, like manifest that, right? As opposed to just like him actually literally seeing the future and then, right. And then that plays out, right? Or is it that he manifested this idea he had, this, whatever hallucination? It is an interesting question. Yeah. Is he mad? Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's the like grand question that's being posed here, and I don't know. And maybe it'll make me go crazy too.
I believe it. Yeah. Steve,
I actually found the page. I had it written down in my notes. So on page 242, the prophet. I'm going to butcher the name. Prince Kellis came down from his fast on Mount Ashiki. The assembly fell absolutely silent, so much so that Martinus could hear the breeze buffet his ears. The tusk tells us sent a hair to him, so he might. Hold on a second. Let me find. So when they came down, Ashton recognized the god as the god, fell immediately to his knees before the fire, not thinking where he would throw his face. So he, like you said, Justin, he said, I find my fire before me, and Peerless Hazel said, the fire burns across the earth, and what fire consumes becomes earth. I am your God. Throw your face to the earth. So he according to the tusk, bowed his head into the flames.
Okay. Well, that explains that. Okay.
Yeah. So
Did you just pull that out of like a different book? Out of the Warrior Prophet?
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
yeah, I have it all written down.
Nice.
Your notes are copious and comprehensive. I am impressed.
That was my first read through that I wrote that down, actually. So
Wow.
I just happened to find it.
You had a vision of the future. You knew we were going to ask about it.
I knew. As the darkness that comes before.
There you go.
I'm impressed not only that you took the notes, you also knew where to look for information, because when I take handwritten notes, it's lost into the void. Like it's just there to reinforce a memory. It's not for actually looking up afterwards.
Yeah.
I write page numbers down so I can look back and for discussions for discussion's sake, like this.
Nice.
Wow. Yeah, I admire that. It's same. The margins of all my books are just scribbled, but I never return to them. I just didn't want. Yeah, like Varsha said, it helps me kind of remember things. Yeah. Yeah.
What's stood out to you, Steve? I feel like we haven't heard a lot of your thoughts on these appendices.
I didn't remember about the how the Inkarai weren't initially aggressive. I did not remember that. We did a couple of things though that I thought was interesting. On the Inkarai made the non-men immortal and doomed them.
Yeah.
So that sounds like the opposite of doomed. If you're immortal, it sounds like you're not doomed because you are immortal. But is it a punishment to be immortal?
Well, I mean, part of it was that in the context of the womb plague, or I mean,
Yeah,
I also wonder if that's a damnation thing too, right? Like, because presumably they can be killed. So, or can they? Actually, I don't know. Are they like flatly like? Are they immortal like Norse gods are, or are they immortal like truly unkillable immortal? Presumably, it's just they're long lived, right?
I just don't. Yeah. I just don't think I don't think they age.
Yeah.
Yeah, because their numbers have dwindled down, right? Sorry, Justin.
That's right. No, you're right.
Yeah, I think because of the womb plague, it says that all of the women were killed, or almost all of the women were killed, and all of the men were like deathly ill, but then were basically cursed with this like immortality. So they can't reproduce, and they're cursed to just live a super long time. There's a note in one of the like really small notes. I think it's an Elju in the E section. It's like it says it's a shrank or a human companion for a non-man to aid with their failing memory. Which I thought was
That is interesting.
Yeah.
We've talked about memory a number of times, right? I mean, like Seswatha, that's one of the major contexts, and it is interesting to think like if you're so long lit, like surely you think about yourself, right? As an individual, like your memories fade with time, right? Like some maybe you keep, but even then they're shaped, right? Our memories are constantly changing in a sense, and like you think about living for hundreds or thousands of years, like would you forget the face of like people you once loved? It really is kind of a curse in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And the whole story of the Huron spear, that's the way that it was hidden and no one knew where it was. And I thought it was really interesting how something like that can be hidden.
Yeah.
And the non-man, no god. We don't know whether he is a god or what sort of creature he is. Apparently, he's armored, and the head and spear is the only thing that can kill him. Which again, Seshwata knew about how, and
the non-man is, or not the non-man. Did the exact same thing you did. The no god is still a giant question mark, right? Because he seems like he's like senile, which is interesting. But is he? Yeah, what is he like? in terms of if we had to like put like a species, a racial category on him, right? Like he's not one of the Inkaroi, right? Like the Inkaroi discovered him. And so what is he? He's immortal, but he's like undead now, or was. It's what is he? Right? How would you classify him? It's a huge mystery. And I'm curious to see if we get answers about. And yeah, that he's like this. I mean, who knows what's inside the sarcophagus, right? That is seemingly killed. Is it a body, or is it just like a spirit? Is it, some sort of elemental force that he summons, like wind and the plague and everything? I don't know.
What do you guys think of the fact that he's anathema to life? I don't know if I pronounced that word correctly, but basically everything dies when he comes alive, which, I mean, yeah, it seems like a malevolent force, but also, so do viruses kill like that too. So is it just that he seems conscious because he can speak and is asking questions about where he is and what he's doing, but is he just not aware that he's wielding this power and things are dying around him? Or do you think he's actively killing and bringing an end to life?
I definitely feel like with what we've read that he almost feels more like a force of nature. I mean, he's like conscious, but again, like he reads like he's senile, asking like, what is it that he asks?
Where am I?
Where am I? Yeah. And
what do you
Yeah, maybe it's just that the Inkaroi or the consult are summoning him as this, like, this raw power, but he's not fully aware, or it is not fully aware of what it's doing.
It does, yeah. I mean, is he one of the gods, but like corrupted? Is he, there's so much mystique, right? Because he's almost framed like this, like, Melkor, Satan, like the Dark Lord, right? But he's not willful like those are, and he also is very physical too. I mean, like, again, going back to like kind of biblical stories, Satan is not like, we have this sort of pop culture view of him, but like in the actual like mythology, he like doesn't manifest and like with horns and like a devil tail and like a trident and shit, right? Like he's like this invisible spirit. And there's even debate, like, is the serpent in the story of Adam and Eve, like, is that even him? Like, he's not named the same way, right? Like, there's a lot of kind of projecting and like trying to connect stories and sort of our modern pop culture understanding of things. While the no god is this like very real, like, what is, is he a fallen god, some sort of like the fallen angel parallel, or is he like, what is he? What's going on there? I think we talked very early on about the idea that maybe he's this like necromancer, sort of like this upraised like sorcerer himself. But then why, like, what happened to him? What made him the way he is? How does he keep getting brought back? How does that work?
But the idea of him being some sort of necromancer is interesting because he travels in a sarcophagus, and the sarcophagus is itself embedded with Kore. That's right. Why he's immune to magic. Like, maybe what's being contained within is like, like we were just seeing the like residual power of the no god, like, and like what's really at the heart of it is maybe something more powerful, or maybe that's the way that the power is harnessed somehow. I don't know.
That's interesting. I didn't notice the sarcophagus thing at all, I have to confess. But yeah, that's why I'm glad I come to this discussion. The gods, the definition for the gods in the appendix is supernatural inhabitants of the outside, possessing human characteristics and figuring as objects of ritual and worship, etc., etc. So, was the no god pulled from the outside, kind of like Eokus pulls the demons down, and like I guess the Scarlet Spires?
That's right. Yeah. That would make sense. And again, what is the outside? Like this other reality? Yeah.
But also the Inkroi apparently didn't have magic, right? So are there different powers that can bring creatures from the outside? Is the sorcery just one way to access them?
According to the appendix, the outside is that which lies beyond the world. So that answers everything.
That clarified it all.
Yeah.
I got it now. The secrets of the universe are revealed.
Another thing I didn't notice, or kind of surprised, is the ancient rival to the school of the Sorong, the Mangek. I'm going to butcher every name. Mangeka. That was a school that once they discovered a way to. Sorry, I just had it on my page. Had discovered a catastrophic means to undo the scriptural damnation of sorcerers, and they were outlawed, and they became the consult.
Yeah.
So the consult are humans.
At least partially.
They were. Yeah.
Well, some of the consult are definitely non-men.
Yep.
It was non-men that it was a non-men school of magic that, or maybe the Mangeka, that maybe that's what you just said, that discovered the that undid the or that rediscovered the arc, kind of a thing.
We saw at the end of the Warrior Prophet, I believe, and the like epilogue or the final whatever the final chapter is, that there were non-men like on their side. I mean, we know Memkeratrig, is that his name? Is one of them, right?
Yeah.
He went mad and joined the consult.
We never followed up on that thread, right? In the Thousandfold Thought.
What do you mean?
The thing that happened at the end of the Warrior Prophet, we never went to revisit the fallout from there. Yeah. Okay.
That's a good point. Yeah, we never see if they found out what the hell the Dunyan are.
They really wanted to know.
They really wanted to know. I don't blame them.
Yeah.
I'd really want to know. I don't know that I would go to the lengths they did, but you know.
So the fact that the Scissorim don't have the mark in their practice of sorcery, and the whole metaphysical question about whether what they do really is sorcery, given that they don't leave a mark, is it just that their rewriting of reality is so perfect? Like, if you go by the definition of the mark that I like and want to stick with, that it's basically that you've erased and rewritten reality so you can see it. Is it that they are so perfect at rewriting reality that it's become the fabric of reality itself, so you don't see the mark, and the other schools are sort of imperfect at what they do? Or is it that what they're doing is just some other form of techne and not magic?
That's a really interesting question. I don't think it's techne. It's separate from that.
I think like the Kisharim, well, this is, they kind of go into this, but like my understanding is like, so if the Gnosis is like the most like, pure form, the most powerful like school of magic that bears the mark because it's like pure abstractions, and the other schools sort of use analogy to access that power. Like the Kisharim is like the antithesis of that, is kind of how I read it, because like, which is why Moengus wasn't terribly powerful as a member of the Kisharim, because he's, he is not possessed of like, it's like his ability to be, irrational has been bred out of him essentially.
Right.
Like,
yeah, it's all emotion.
Yeah, right? I thought that was hilarious. Yeah, I am curious. I'm very curious about the Scissorim now and their magic. And
I think that's further proof that sorry to
Yeah.
to interrupt. Well, just further proof that this is written by a Camian because he doesn't know how their magic works, right?
True.
And so this is the one magic system, if you want to use that phrase, that he can't define.
Makes sense. Or are they really channeling some godly spirit, like the prophet Fan, however we're calling him, believes?
Yeah, I think it's interesting too that Thane, I don't know if this was in the book, but I missed it, but just that he was initially a Shriel priest.
Yeah.
Hmm. Oh, I completely read over that. Yeah, that's true.
It is really interesting.
When you guys are, I just had a totally different question off topic, but don't want to interrupt if.
No.
I think Varsha, you posted a forum about the nail of heaven. I totally missed that.
Actually, I didn't find it in the appendix, so maybe someone just spoiled it in the conversation. I don't know if it's supposed to come later, but
Did
yeah.
you say it's like a black hole? Because it says it's the North Star in the appendix.
North Star? Is that what it says?
Yeah,
it's explicitly define it as the North Star.
On 469 written down.
There you go.
Yeah, the nail of heaven is like the North Star. It's like for navigation is the way I kind of took it. Like that's like we use the North Star.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's probably true. Maybe we'll find out more about the nail of heaven later, but this was what someone said in one of the discussions I watched, and there they brought it up because they said it's in the appendix, and I was like, oh cool, like I want to read that. That's the whole reason I read the appendix. I'd tell me the part where the nail of heaven is a wormhole, and it didn't. So maybe it's coming in the later books, or maybe that person misread whatever. I don't know. Oh, the northern star that aside provides the axis from which all other stars revolve. Okay. That's why I was questioning what you guys said, because there was something more interesting than that. It provides the axis from which all other stars revolve. It's almost like it's the center of this universe or something.
Oh,
right. But what I'm wondering is is that almost like a metaphor? Because that's kind of what the North Star in our world seems like. Like I wouldn't be shocked if someone. I mean, I don't know if this was ever a belief or not, or if Bakker just made that up. But the idea that everything is rotating around this. I mean, I guess one of the old beliefs, right, was everything rotates around the Earth. But if the North Star is unchanging, right? That's why it is the North Star. It's the thing you can kind of follow by. Then it seems to human perceptions that all the other stars rotate around it. Does that make sense? And so I'm wondering if that's just taking that and then making it a metaphor, or if it literally is the reality of it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I see what you mean. I feel like if they were saying that this is the perception at the time the appendix was written, it would say so, this, that people believe. I feel like the word believe or speculate would be used if this is what I don't know if there's a scientist equivalent here. I guess the sorcerers are the closest thing we have to scientists in this world. That's their theory, that this is what happens. But this is stated as fact. And taking that at face value, I think it's a very interesting object in the heaven. But if it's not, then yeah, it's just boring.
Well, but yeah, no, I mean, it's an interesting question, right? Because if it is what they believe it is, yeah, I mean, what does that mean? Is it a wormhole? So, is it kind of the gateway to the outside?
Yeah. Wait, was it wormhole or black hole? I forget. Black hole makes sense again because it could be the center of galaxy, but
Right.
And things are spinning around it. But wormhole, again, if it's a wormhole, why would things spin around it? Maybe the gravitational aspects of it make it so that they do. I don't know enough physics to say, but But yeah, anyway, like I don't know. I'll wait for the end of the second series to see if that makes sense, the wormhole thing. But also, where does this notion that what's his name, Indri Sejanis ascended to the nail of heaven come from? Like, what is this thing? Is it just that their brightest star, and sometimes the stories we tell children, or like when they lose people, for instance, that that star over there, that's your mom, and is it like that Sejanus ascended there and became a part of the brightest star in the sky, or like did that literally happen?
That is a good question. I mean, I think it, whether it's sort of like a metaphor or not, I think it does add credence to the theory. Again, whether or not it's sort of their belief or if this is a fact, but of the nail of heaven being this sort of gateway to the outside, because presumably that's where whatever sort of heavens they believe in, and hells for that matter, exist, right? It's outside. So the nail of heaven must be a sort of gateway, at least in their beliefs, if not literally.
Yeah.
Just because I was curious, I looked up our North Star. It is Polaris, known as the North Star, sits more or less directly above the Earth's North Pole along our planet's rotational axis. So the Earth rotates around that line like a spinning top. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I there's so much, again, about the weird, like, blurred line between sort of reality and like the supernatural in this series, which I love. My initial thought is that it's probably just a belief and they just don't realize that that's how the star works, this particular star, but maybe not. I mean, because again, is the outside real, like, or is it, I mean, magic is like, how does all of this work? It's interesting.
I mean, it makes sense that their beliefs about the stars, etc., are just developing now, because Akamian tells Esmenet that whole story about how the distant lights she sees in the sky, the stars, are actually other suns. I think that conversation happened, right? And he says that the Inkaroi came from there. And what was my point? Yeah, so they're just still developing theories about what those sparks of light are and like what that means. So yeah, it's quite possible that this is the belief at the time without any validation or experimentation to prove things.
Yeah. So little thing, just not like a cool deep reveal or anything, but I do think it's really fun that the mountain range that encircles Golgotha, which is like clearly the Mordor equivalent, right, is called the Ring Mountains.
I didn't catch that.
He is not afraid to do a little nod to his inspirations.
Yeah, speaking of nods, someone again from a different discussion that I was listening to pointed out that Dune is an inspiration, and the people are called Dunian. So that was
yeah.
See, I don't think that's a Dune nod. I think that's actually a reference to oh my god, the in Lord of the Rings, there's the what's like the name of like the race of men that Aragorn.
Yeah.
They have almost the exact same name.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna look this up. This is, otherwise it's gonna drive me nuts. Aragorn, race of men that like come from the Dunedain. Dunedain. It's like almost spelled the exact same way. So I think I mean, I can see why you would like think that, right? Like it kind of does match on. Maybe it's combining the two. I don't know, right?
Two nods in one. Why not?
Yeah, like it totally could be. But to me, that's how that read, is like it's so close to Dunedain, and it plays a similar role because Kellis is the like a really messed up, strange version of Aragorn, right? Where he's like the prophesied king to return before to beat the bad guys. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Speaking of Tolkien references, one that caught my eye early on was Asgiliath. It made me think of the Fortress of Osgiliath.
That's a good one too. Yeah, good point.
It's not exactly in the right place, but
one thing that I didn't really realize until my recent reread of Dune and this series is that stories that explore prophecies have all the same paradoxes and contradictions and conundrums that time travel stories do, which I never realized. Like, it's easy to read fantasy stories and like prophecy, this will happen, and then just watch it play out. And that's fun, but if a story is written with the purpose of exploring these aspects of destiny and determinism and free will and what that means, that is very, very interesting. I think that just elevates the story so much more.
It's so interesting and like philosophically fascinating to think about, right? Because it does get into those questions of free will and time, and like how does time work, and when a story actually takes the time, no pun intended, to like develop that and explore it and think about those paradoxes, right, and what they mean. Because there are definitely stories that, whether you're talking about prophecies or time travel, just brush it off and are definitely the worst for it. Like they don't really like grapple with kind of the inherent paradoxes and the inherent conflict. The sort of things that like our characters would be thinking about and struggling with. It's just so much richer for that. It's something I'm interested in doing in my own writing, honestly, is like, I think it's just one of those fascinating things, like particularly again around like the idea of determinism and the idea of like, okay, if you can see the future, like if it's not a possible future, which is how it works in Dune, is like they're all possible futures is my understanding. But here, right, like if you have this vision and sort of a lot of prophecies where you hear about it, like then that kind of means that like time is laid out, right? Like it's set. If things are happening, the way they're going to happen, then like free will isn't real, and like how does that decide? Is that decided by God, right? The whole notion of predestination, or is that just sort of like, this is the way the universe is like laid out? Like this is just how time functions, sort of in a mechanical level. It's really interesting.
Yeah. And sort of the circularities inherent in the subject of the prophecy being aware of the prophecy, right? Now, are the actions you take because of the prophecy, or are they
exactly?
Would you have done that anyway? Yeah, this is a lot of circularity in prophecy stories. Like, I really tend to hyper focus on time travel stories to see whether they have the circularity and whether that's deliberate or not. And when it feels like it's not deliberate, it really bugs the heck out of me. If it's a planned good circularity, great. But if it's not, and you're just like randomly putting things together, anyway, that gripe aside, I think that I didn't realize that stories about prophecy can do that too, can explore the exact same themes and like get to the same levels of depth. And I think it can be a lot more deliberate with that stuff, right? Because with time travel, I feel like no matter how hard you try, it's going to be messed up. There is going to be a circularity introduced that you didn't intend. But with stories about prophecy, maybe you can break things out, but do that exploration anyway in a meaningful way. But yeah, that's the end of my rambling on that. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I couldn't agree more. I think like this, the fact that Bakker like identifies as a philosopher and like this series as like this like sort of grand thought exercise where he's kind of like embracing, at least so far, some of these paradoxes. And like, it's, for me anyway, like I struggle with, like I need like a vulgar illustration in order to like really be able to grapple with this stuff. And like, for me, and again, I'm not like a fantasy head or a sci-fi head, like this is one of the best examples of this I've encountered. Like it's so rich. Like I just want to like reread it. I want to reread everything.
So Justin, you are a bit ahead of us in the reading of the series, right?
No.
Or have you? No? Okay.
I just started reading last night, The Judging Eye.
Oh, cool. Okay, that's great. Okay, yeah. Very
I'm
nice.
excited
Yeah.
to jump into it. Oh, I mean, I don't know if we should say it here or maybe at the start of the next episode. I've started this now, so Steve, you got it out if you want. But our friend, our dear friend Mike, nothing bad has happened. I mean, I don't know what's happened, but he's not going to be joining us going forward. Hopefully, we'll get his comments going around, but you will not hear his lovely voice moving forward. To our, I don't know how many people listen, but to any listeners. That is an update.
Yeah,
Nice.
hoping he can rejoin us when things calm down for him. But it sounds like it's just a life thing where it's busy and lots going on. So hopefully he'll join us when he is able to. We talk about him like he's dead or something.
I know. That's what I was like. As I was saying, I was like, I don't want it to sound like he's like I don't know what he's just like busy or something. Like I don't want to make it sound like he's like cancer. Like
I really like that guy. Yeah, he's gone.
We kicked him out actually.
He's exiled. Yeah. He's like the nicest guy.
I was bummed to read that.
Yeah. Just really quickly, something that we talked about during our discussions about the Shrank. I think we were asking ourselves if the Inquiry created them, and they did create the Shrank. So,
And I had a question about when I found out that they created the Shrank, whether they are like the Orcs, where they just have like a factory assembly line to build them always, or if they can reproduce. Apparently they can, and now they've overrun and taken over the planet. So.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the glossary it says that there are possibly more strength than men in Irwa.
Scary thought.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll get some? Sorry, go ahead, Justin. Yeah.
Oh no, well I was going to ask if I could throw something else out there. So if we're still talking about this, by all means.
I was just going to make a bad joke. It's fine.
So I don't know if you all have talked about this. I don't think so, but in the glossary, there were a couple of things that while I was reading, and that it occurred to me for some reason that possibly Kellis has non-man blood in his lineage. There's a passage on the Kunyiri in the glossary that talks about Anasurimbor Nanor Ukerja the First, who lived to be like 180 years old and reputedly had non-man blood. And of course, this would have been, thousands of years before Kellis is alive. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, if that would have any impact, but if Moengus and Kellis are both, have non-man blood, then that could kind of explain why they've got, in addition to their Dunyan conditioning, why they've got a little something more than men who.
Yeah, absolutely. What does that do, right? Yeah, I'm curious to see with the non-men ones. Like, supposedly we're going to see them more, right, in the next series, and like what. I mean, we have seen them a couple of times, but like, how physically different are they? Like, are they like that? Are they like super soldiers? Compared to like your average person? Like, are they more like, I mean, how do they relate? Yeah, to humanity. It is an interesting thought.
Yeah,
I think. Sorry, go ahead, Justin.
Oh, I was just gonna say they call humans the like. I don't know, the boys of summer or something like that, right? Like, yeah. They run hot and they're foolish in comparison.
Can't argue with that.
Oh yeah, the Shrank description I thought was interesting because it's the orc equivalent, and I've not read Lord of the Rings deeply enough to make these comparisons as quickly as you did, Carl, but I would have thought they looked ugly based on how they were described, but apparently their skin is devoid of pigment, and despite the refined to the point of repulsiveness beauty of their faces, so they're so beautiful that they're repulsive.
It's one of those things that I love that as a description. I have no idea how to picture that in my head.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to map, like, so beautiful to repulse. Like, what does that even look like?
their physiognomy is the G silent in this word, but anyway, their physiognomy is bestial, though hairless, with pinched shoulders and deep almond-shaped breasts. What? Okay, anyway.
Like a dog, kind of. Like
Yeah.
sharp brisket.
Mm.
No.
They're oh god. They're I love the description. It's so weird. They're like hunched. Yeah, it's cool. Except they're, again, unlike orcs. I mean, I guess there are some orcs that are smaller, so never mind. But I was gonna say, like, I mean, this isn't a Lord of the Rings thing, actually. It's definitely more of like a Dungeons and Dragons and like World of Warcraft and things like that. The way it's permeated pop culture, where you think of orcs as these like big hulking guys, but they're, in Tolkien's world, that's not necessarily the case. And that's, for Sronk being the sort of orc equivalent, that's definitely not the case because they're smaller than humans.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's interesting too that all of the monsters are literally created, right? They're like literally abominations.
That's true.
Like even dragons, you so often in fantasy stories, like dragons are these like elder beings, right? They're like, whether you're thinking of like Smaug or like, often they are evil, right? But not always, but they're like these older creatures, right? That have existed, before. And now they're like in this world, they're a product of genetic experimentation. It makes you wonder, are we going to see something new? Is there going to be something else in the next 4 books, right? We're going to get some more genetic monstrosities.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know why I say that. Like, I'm thrilled about it, but actually, yeah, I am. Show
I'm
me some
totally
monsters.
I hope so, I definitely hope we get more dragon. The dragons are not all dead. I want them to come back.
And we have not actually we've seen Srank, but we've not seen Bashrag, right? Like,
I don't think so. Not in the present. No.
Yeah, I'm curious about them too, because I feel like they're like part of their physiognomy has been described, like they have like really thick bones, like huge bones. I don't remember what else about them, but they sound massive, like a troll or something almost.
Yeah.
Am I thinking of some other book, or did we get a place that was inside a big bunch of bones somewhere here in this series?
A place inside a big bunch of bones.
As in, like it was like inside a rib cage of a monster or something like that. Was there?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the arc. Like it was.
Oh,
just,
okay.
Yeah, as like giant inside of a giant rib cage. In this, in the dream where Seswatha and now Kayuti are traversing, climbing down or up, climbing up. I don't remember.
So is the ark a creature too then?
Well, they describe it as a womb, almost like the ark gave birth.
Oh, okay, that's why they create the monsters.
I mean, that's an interesting question, though, right? Like, is there a biological aspect to it? Is it biological? I mean, I had sort of taken for granted that it was just like a metal spaceship, right? But like maybe there is like an bioorganic like function. I mean, because that's where all the monsters come out of, right? Interesting.
And that's where Aurang and Arax like retreated to in order to like, presumably like heal themselves or just be sustained until they could be rediscovered. Yeah, maybe there's some healing quality to it. I don't know.
Did you guys already talk about the cants of calling and the metaphysics associated with that you can only call someone who is in a place that you've been to, and then they're here and you're there, and like a whole bunch of word gymnastics with that.
I'm gonna have to go like imminently. I probably can do like a few more minutes, but
Okay.
I think we're almost done though.
Yeah.
I finished talking about everything that I brought to discuss, but
Yeah, we have to do the epigraphs another time. I've thought that might happen because there's just so much to talk about.
Yeah, there's a ton.
Oh, I completely forgot about the epigraphs. Good thing. I will go look through them and look at all the ones I highlighted for next
I
time.
only have a few tabs, not very many.
So few, Steve. So few.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
God.
That's 2 read-throughs though. I'll post a picture on the forum. But
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say to people who are just listening, Steve unveiled this monstrosity of little tabs on all his books.
There's probably one on every page by the looks of it.
That's the Legion right there. We were wondering about the Legion.
Yeah.
That's it.
not too bad. Not too bad.
I'll show you my Malazan books sometime. I stopped tabbing because I needed to pull one for every page sometimes too. So I'm like, no, not tabbing anymore. I'll just write in my books.
Oh no. We have 2 writers in the margins today. Oh, what am I
I'm just gonna make Steve cry for a little bit
Oh
while
no.
Carl looks up the thing that he's talking about.
You
I
know,
gotta,
I do a terrible thing too, where I not only write in the margin, but I dog ear the pages that I want to go back to. And it's just like, I have like 100 pages dog eared in this book.
oh,
Incredible.
Justin, just please tell us you don't break the spines.
I can't make any promises about that.
at least not on purpose.
Not intentionally. This one's intact, so I feel good about that. Yeah.
That's a win.
That's a win. Yeah.
For
If
books
it's an
everywhere.
accident, if it's an accident, that's one thing. But if it's intentional, that's a whole nother thing.
Get him out of here. Someone call the cops.
Yeah, I guess we can wrap up probably then, Carl. So we can let Carl go. But
That's
Yeah.
all I got.
oh. Am I doing the wrap up now?
yeah.
Steve's bitching me.
No, I just it feels weird for me to do because it's it's your show. Like I'm
Oh.
just here hanging out.
Okay, so I guess we're meeting in a week to talk about the Judging Eye, the first 4 chapters. If you're reading along with us, if you'd like to join us for the discussion, come check out the Page Chewing forum, talk to us either on the forum or come join us in this conversation like Justin did, and which we're very happy about. And with that, we'll do outros, I guess. Steve, would you like to start us off?
Sure. You can find me on pagechewing.com, on the Page Chewing podcast, or any of the other podcasts we do every week. Speculative Speculations, Film Chewing, or podcast, or Page Chewing Comics and Manga. But the best place is pagechewing.com, the forums. Come say hello. And yeah, we like making new friends. So
Absolutely. And I am Carl. You can find me on Page Chewing. If you want to find me elsewhere in the bowels of the internet, you can find me at, I think Carl D. Albert is most of my handles, social handles. But yeah, come to the Page Chewing. It's much nicer and quieter. I mean, occasionally we get a little doomery, but otherwise it's lovely. Everyone's nice.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for having me. By the way, this has been great. I was like weirdly nervous coming into this. I don't know. It's funny, but you guys are great. This was super fun. And anyway, I'm Justin, and I'm on Page Chewing now a little bit, and I'm not really on any social media, but
Good for you.
yeah, yeah, I used to be. I sometimes write on a film blog called midnightmovietrain.com.
oh, cool.
Yeah.
So Justin, we have a question for you that you have to answer before we wrap up. Will you be joining us when we record on Tuesday nights?
Yes, I am.
Hell yes.
And there's only one right answer.
It's late for me, but I'm gonna make it work because I just feel like it really enriches. It will really enrich the experience of reading.
Yeah.
And yeah. So
Awesome.
yeah, if you'll have me, I'd be so happy.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
One of us. One.
Yes. Yeah. How about you hear that?
Yeah, that's really great that you'll be joining us, Justin. I'm really excited. And you can find me on my YouTube channel, Reading by the Rainy Mountain. You can also find us on the Speculative Speculations podcast and a bunch of others that you can find linked from the about page of the YouTube channel, and they're also posted as videos, yada, yada, yada. But, come talk to us on the Patreon forum. That's the best place to find all of us. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye.